Aloha, everybody. We are live here, Nourish All. I'm just trying to see if I can get on Facebook Live too. And let me add, we have a very special guest today who is all about him. Aloha, aloha.
Hey,
Yay!
it worked! All right. Hey, Sam. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing just great. How are you, Ed?
I'm doing really well, thank you. That's funny.
Good.
Kind of cuts off the top of my head here. We'll adjust that. There you go. All right.
I know. We are getting used to to lives. Oh, here we go. I was just trying to add in the Facebook people,
Oh, very good.
but I've never done a Facebook Live. Seems like it should be the same. Um, so yeah, welcome everybody. We have quite a setup here today. We're going to talk about Nourish All. And here we are. Here we're live on Facebook. So unfortunately for Facebook, it's going to be just me. But just so everybody knows, we have a special guest on Instagram Live, Ed from Garden Creator Studio. So if you're on Instagram, head on over to my Instagram, Samantha.Koches, and probably better to tune in there, but we'll do both. So thanks for joining, Ed. And yeah.
Excited for the update. Just to see you be able to share all that you've been doing with Nourish All. I mean, just the tremendous amount of progress that you've made in the last couple months I think is going to blow people away. So really excited about today.
Thanks. Cool. So for those who don't know me well, Samantha and I recently founded my first nonprofit called Nourish All, and the focus is on fresh food security for vulnerable communities, and we'll talk more about what that means. Tuning in from Hawaii, where I also moved almost exactly a year ago. So very happy to be on this island and to be starting out the company here in Hawaii. And we have Ed here.
Howdy. I'll adjust this a little bit. So, hi, I'm Ed from Garden Creator Studio. I help people transform yard spaces into outdoor living spaces, and that's primarily geared toward homeowners, but also, as you'll find out, folks like Sam can do amazing things with the information. So, I'm excited to talk about that a little bit more, but it's really been inspiring to see all that you've done.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll give major kudos to you because I don't know that Nourish All would be, well, I know that Nourish All would not be where it is today without Ed and Garden Creator Studio. So early plug for you. But
It's
yeah,
been
so
fun collaboration, definitely. So
yeah, lots of co-inspiration.
So today is all about giving people a sense of kind of like the snapshot of where you are. And the question that I have, the first question I have for you is this going to be a regular tradition now that Nourish All has become a real, organization that's become legit and official? Are you going to commit to doing a live update on Instagram every year?
Oh, definitely every
Oh,
year.
good.
Some people who follow me know that I actually have been doing a couple lives from the farm where I also work,
Mhm.
sort of unrelated to Nourish All, but is a contributing factor in how I learned how to grow food. And I've been tuning in just straight outside from the farm to, with little tidbits about weeding or here's what we're planting. And this is the first time I think I look like I'm indoors. So perhaps there will be not only a yearly Instagram live, but a couple more focused just on Nourish and not outside in the elements.
There you go. It's a little more
Yeah.
comfortable. You have tea, everything. It's all set up.
I do, of course. On our Ed and I are both
Yeah, well,
coffee fans, so
gotta have our coffee. Yeah, oh wow, you
yeah,
got a new mug. That looks fabulous.
yeah, yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, Sam, would you so tell us a little bit more about the problem that Nourish All is focused on solving, and then we can get into the mission, how you want to approach that.
Yeah. So the basic problem, which I think faces everybody, right, is access to fresh, healthy food. So even if you have, a grocery store down the street, it's still likely not coming from, ecologically sound sources, is not as nutritious as something that you could grow yourself, includes shipping, and a lot of our food comes not from local sources. When you get into Hawaii, something I learned when I moved here last year was about 70% of food on the islands is imported. And if you have ever been to Hawaii or seen pictures of Hawaii, you think green, lush, rain. We have 13 different climate zones. So actually, so many different things can and do grow here. Yet we're importing 70% of food. And then when you add in disruptions like COVID or anything else, then you see the shelves in Costco and grocery stores empty. So overall, we have a food problem, I would say. And then when you get into, at-risk or underserved communities, so right now I'm focused on folks who are living in affordable housing. There's a whole lot of other strains. So the economic strains on, making choices between, do I go buy fresh food that's expensive, or do I pay for, childcare, healthcare? I worked at Feeding America, and so I know that there's a huge amounts of hunger in the country, which shouldn't be the case because we have plenty of food and we have plenty of ability to grow food. So the problem is just a lack of fresh, healthy food that's locally available. And then in Hawaii, and with these communities in particular, that food access is low when it really doesn't. There's not many reasons why it should be low.
There you go. And so you've really set up the mission of Nourish All, at least at this starting phase, to focus in on these folks at affordable housing communities. And if I understand it, enable them or give them agency over being able to produce some of their own food and kind of fill in some of the gaps there. Is that true?
Absolutely. Yeah, correct.
Awesome. And so do you want to round out that mission a little bit more? Or does that kind of encapsulate it?
Yeah, so the mission, I would say in the short words, is fresh food security for vulnerable communities.
Oh, nice.
And how we do that is through three different ways. So designing edible spaces, building edible spaces, and then adding in the component of education as well. So it's kind of that holistic, it is, set up to enable people and empower people to grow their own food, rather than if you think about, are we just starting a farm and I'm becoming a farmer? No, it's about empowering and enabling others who want to grow food and don't have access to fresh food, don't have access to land, don't have access to the know-how, whatever those barriers are. We think that Nourish All can come in and support through that design, build, and educate.
Nice. How do each one of those overcome some of the roadblocks that they run into? Like design, for instance, how does that overcome some of the roadblocks?
Yeah, the design part's actually my favorite, which is probably due to your course and your
I
mentorship.
love the design too.
But what I found so far in our pilot, so I'll talk a bit about that, but our pilot project is at an affordable housing property called Kekumu. And I won't, yeah, it's in Hawaii.
Yeah.
It's on the big island of
You're going to
Hawaii.
tell us more about that later
Yeah.
in this. Okay, cool.
Yeah. But I found that the residents there have ideas for wanting to grow, but don't know exactly whether, a star fruit tree can grow in this conditions like there it's dry and windy and hot. Um, versus I want tomatoes, but will they grow here? How do I put all the pieces together? And also it's just a lot to want to do something and then basically not know how to get the first step of setting it up.
Yeah.
So the design I found has been really fun, and basically gets past that first hurdle of, what do I do?
Yeah.
And then the build part, I think, is actually a crosses the biggest hurdle, which is financial limited resources, or the actual like muscle to get it done. Like right now, I'm working with two residents, and the three of us, we need more help, right? And we're getting more help, but it takes a lot of material and effort and blood, sweat, and tears, literally, to put something together. So the financial capital, the access to resources, which is a nonprofit, I've been able to get a lot of support. And then the educate, just kind of rounds everything together. I found a lot of people in Hawaii know quite a lot about the land here. In other places like Chicago or New York, where I used to live, the disconnect between how to grow food and, the tomato that's sitting on your counter, um, there's not a lot of knowledge there.
I
So
guess
hoping
Hawaii.
to
Yeah.
fill that.
But even in Hawaii, are you finding that there are this sort of like know A, B, and C, but they don't know D, and then they know E, but they're missing that gap in between. So if you can connect that bridge,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And it's a beautiful relationship too, because there's a lot of Hawaiian tradition and cultures and practices here that I'm learning too. Um, so I find myself, learning and teaching. And I think anyone who's involved in growing food or farming or gardening in particular knows that you'll never know everything. There's always so much more to learn.
there's always so much more. It's just amazing. I've been
Yeah.
in this profession for 20 years, and there's so much I still have to learn. It's just incredible. So it's
Yeah.
Yeah, it's exciting, but part of what excites me about what you're doing is that you are opening up a path for people to continue to develop themselves. Like they're in affordable housing communities. They're kind of like getting a reset on their lives, getting themselves stable, and then being able to now build some new pathways, both for resources, but also potentially for opportunities. Have you seen anything like that? Like, has the capacity building been helpful in other ways?
A little bit so far. We're still early. That's one thing that I'm really hoping to get into more, especially as we do bigger projects. But even so far, I found, one of the residents, he already works as a landscaper, and in Hawaii, we build a lot of rock walls out of the volcanic rock. Um, and I think that he's been talking about starting his own landscaping company or a mason company, and so and we've actually already talked about identifying another project that we could do together, building a garden to help a woman who is buying Hawaiian homeland, like land dedicated for Hawaiian um, lineage, but she has a physical disability. And so one of the residents already, called me up and said, oh, we can do something, we can transform her land. So I think the wheels are turning that, this could be something more. And I really hope that it will be not just for this project, but for other ones. That's an element I definitely want to incorporate.
Fantastic. So you had a couple of goals for this year, right? And what
Yes.
are your couple of goals for this year? What do you want to accomplish in 2022?
Um, so 3 big goals. Number one is finish my pilot project.
Okay.
at Kekumu. So that is an edible garden at the affordable housing property in Hawaii. Um, Number two is to establish a partnership with an affordable housing property developer or manager and essentially start to get a model going where we can install community gardens at affordable housing or low income housing properties
Hmm.
and create a network of that. So I'd really like to understand, um, the dynamics in that industry and form a partnership this year with one or more developers and managers. And
Okay.
then the third one is going global, which may sound a little ambitious to people, especially who don't know me, but I've done a lot of work internationally, especially in the last couple of years. And I already have one project with a school in Kenya that I've worked with the organization before, Kijana. So we're going to do something with them in May, and then also doing a discovery visit to a refugee camp in Mali. So
Wow,
I
that's cool.
have, yeah, I'm very excited for those. So that will be 2022. I'm very curious to rewatch this next January and see what actually happened because we know it's never works out the way that we think it will.
Well, what's exciting about that is that when we were first talking in September and October of last year, you had some goals that you had outlined for trying to do in the next year, and you've already basically done those. And so now you're setting up the next set of goals. You just sort of brought them forward and got them done in a few months. So all of this seems doable. You already have one of those trip schedules, don't you?
I do, yes. I have. I will be in Kenya from, I think, May 15th to June 15th, and then tacking on a trip to Mali either before or after.
Wow,
Yeah,
little
and
jealous.
so,
That's
yeah,
fantastic.
Kijana is a great organization. It's the one in Kenya. I almost 10 years ago went to Kenya and was working with them supporting schools that they support. At that time they didn't have their own dedicated school,
Hmm.
um, but now just in the past year, I think either last year or in 2020, they broke ground on a school in Western Kenya, and this is headed by a former high school teacher of mine, actually. So pretty crazy that we've gone through so much together. Yeah.
Yeah,
Jim, yeah. My mom's on and she knows Jim. Jim Cummings, he's the head of Kijana. So I'm really excited about that project.
fantastic. Well, I'm really looking forward to seeing pictures. Then when you're over there, you can give us some updates on the progress on the ground. So
Yeah.
that's exciting. Speaking of progress, shall we talk about Kikumu?
Yes.
Okay, tell us how Kikumu's doing. So a little bit about it first, and then like what's happened so far.
Yes. So Kekumu, what Ed and I call it for short, and is it's actually Kekumu Akahe. I always leave off the last just because it sounds easier, but it is an affordable housing condo complex. So there's 48 different units, and it is in a beautiful location in Hawaii. It's in a really dry zone, but overlooks the ocean, which is amazing. And there are a couple residents there who are interested in a garden. There already was an existing garden that had been running for a couple years, but the man who was stewarding that just became unable to follow through with it anymore. And so I connected with Kekumu through the Hawaii Public Housing Authority, and we decided that it would be a great location for a pilot community garden there, just because of the interest from the residents. And they have this great space that kind of wraps around the condos
Mhm.
and was totally open. So we had a blank slate to come in and start. So it is it's going, which is amazing. Like last year, I took Ed's course, the Garden Creator Studio, and was just mock designing gardens. And then, a couple months later, here I am actually on the ground. I have sketches that I've created with the residents of, what they want in the space. We're going to have some raised garden beds, mostly because the soil is really rocky and it's dry. So we want to, and just for better access. We've got some fruit trees planted in the ground already. We have, yesterday I was down there potting cherry tomatoes and eggplant. We have a fence built already. Jordan, I don't know, actually, shouldn't share too many details of the people, but one of the residents there, he is very crafty with building. And so he built a fence to protect against the windbreak. And really exciting is this Friday, we have an upcoming volunteer build day with students from a local high school. And so we'll have about hopefully 10 people there, 10 students who are going to help and build raised beds, shovel soil. I've got, so many materials for them to play around with and to build. Plant starts, which they started in the school nursery that they're bringing. And then another big
from a local landscaper.
Yes, yeah. So I've had so much local support. So the school, the local high school, and one of the students is doing her senior capstone, like independent study project, basically with me. So I get to mentor her, and she gets to, really be a part of something that's becoming real, and she's been incredibly helpful. I have made connections with a local landscaping and irrigation company, and it is a local Hawaiian man too, which just being able to work with people who are really from Hawaii and giving back to the land makes it even more special. And so he was able to get excess lumber and irrigation tubing and screws and nails and all sorts of things from the projects, the houses that he works on. And then the third one is a
this is like
partnership
leftover
with
materials after they
yeah,
get done with the project, and then there's always kind of like the buffer amount that you keep on hand. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, best. There's always, you'd rather have too much than too little.
you want to get it done
And
and run back to the store. Yeah,
yeah, so he connected with all these, contractors, landscapers, irrigation professionals in the area, and they brought their excess materials to his house, and he organized them for me, and we transported them over. And so what makes it even more special is that we're using upcycled materials because we want this to be, friendly to the land and nurturing to the land. So using as much existing materials as we can. And then the last one is also support from Soil Plus in Kona, which anyone from Hawaii knows Soil Plus is like, they just have mounds and mounds of amazing soil. So we wanted to have some extra, really rich soil to mix with what's already there. And they donated a big load of soil to me, and super grateful for that. So all of this has happened in the past, really like the past month, a lot of those connections, but over the past, 3 or 4 months, we've been designing and preparing all this. And so also, if you go to my Instagram, I have a highlight on there, I think for the Kekumu pilot, and you can see some before and after pictures, and I have many more actually that I need to update.
there you go. Yeah, and the design, it's sort of a co-creation process with the residents. Is that how you're approaching
Yes,
it? Yeah.
very much co-creative. I'm with them. They actually kind of feel like family now because they go down, they know each other. And if I bring, my favorite thing we joke is that I'll go to garage sales, I will go to plant nurseries and just find all these amazing gems, like beautiful tangerine tree. I got dryland taro from a backyard garden in Kona, actually. this man who now has become sort of my plant source. I have a fruit tree source, and I will just come with all of the plants and the goodies. And then we work together to say, oh, okay, we should put that here. Let's take a look at the design sketch that we made at the beginning. And is this still, on board with what we're doing? So they're very, very active.
Fantastic. And they're learning about looking at sun angles and wind directions and all those sorts of things and how those influence where you put different plants.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. All
Ooh.
right. And so what is coming up for Kikumu? Like, what do you see the time frame looking like for that project? And a couple of, what are the
Mhm.
milestones coming up?
So a big milestone, like I said, this weekend will be a big build day. And then I think we'll have another 30-day sprint, which if you tune in to Garden Creator Studio, you will understand what that means. But another sprint to do another build section. So I'd like to get, this will focus on getting the beds and the soil and a lot of the plants in the ground. And then I think there'll be another phase of sort of filling in with more decorative or, other bits and pieces. And then would like to wrap up the major build parts by beginning of April,
Okay.
and then have April and maybe in this couple weeks into May before I depart for Kenya, as a way to make sure the residents are equipped with the knowledge and all the tools and materials that they need to then keep the garden alive and thriving. So those are the major things to hit.
That's a good set of milestones to hit. And what's neat about it is that they're near term. So many times we hear about projects, people working on projects to support the community, and it's like, okay, and this year we're going to do this one piece, and then next year we'll talk about doing the next piece, and then maybe in 5 years we'll get around to actually putting something on the ground. And you're like, in a couple of months we're going to go from let's talk about this to boom, it's done, let's take the pictures.
Yeah, rapid fire.
Right.
We've got a lot of momentum now, and you just reminded me that at the end, I'm working with a local videographer who does videos for really interesting food organizations here, like the Ulu, it's breadfruit co-op that's big in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
She is going to do a before and after video on the project. So
Wow,
that will
that's
be hopefully around May.
and hopefully that ends up on the website so that people can really see like the before and after transition. That's cool.
Yeah,
We'll
absolutely.
get to the website at the end. You'll let us know about that, but that's a neat development. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about Nourish All? And because I think that you have done, I think people might be surprised how much you have done and put together and the partnerships that you've already built to kind of like set yourself up to be able to make progress this fast. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's been a labor of love and honestly probably a decade of experience coming. Um, so in recent months, I would say I have a lot of inspiration um, from you, Ed, from Garden Creator Studio,
Oh, thank you.
which yeah, which really helped me get the tools behind the vision of what I wanted to do. So that coupled with a lot of other mentors. So I have a lot of farmer mentors. I work with a farmer here named John. Is not on social media, but we'll give him kudos. Farmer John, I've learned a ton from him. And then I've done multiple actually work exchanges, but two in particular stand out. I went to a farm in France for 2 years in a row, Philippe and his family. So I learned a lot from them about how to grow food, and then did a stint in Thailand as well at Gaia Ashram. They are actually, I'll give a plug for them. They just reopened for volunteers in Thailand, and they're hosting a permaculture design course, I
Cool.
think very soon. And so learned a ton from them. But all of that kind of farming bit was the baseline for me in, wanting to do something with land and wanting to help people with the basic needs, which is, food, water, shelter. Food really always stood out to me. And so that's why I went and left the corporate world to travel and do farm exchanges. So a lot of learning from that and a lot of experience, which kind of got me to this point. Um, I think, from the nonprofit side, like working with Jim at Kijana, learned a lot about nonprofit. He was in education, but still, very similar. And then I worked at Feeding America as well, which is the largest domestic food relief organization. So worked in their strategy department. And I guess what I'm saying is there's basically like the whole world of, like nonprofit, corporate, farming, landscape design, which is really specific. All of that really came together last year in the roots of what I've always wanted to do, which is to make the world better. And it sounds so cliche, but yeah, I've always just really wanted to help people. And so I took all of that experience that I had in business and nonprofit and farming and now garden design and just came up with the, idea that we're going to help people by enabling food access and helping them to grow food.
And design, build, and education.
And educate, yep.
Fantastic. You have a board of directors that you've put together
I
to
do,
support
yes.
your nonprofit, to do your official nonprofit stuff that has to be done to make the nonprofit actually function, right?
Yes, I do. I have two amazing board members, Jess Sun and Leslie Brindle. They are both two, my best friends in life, but also really amazing individuals. They work in law and finance, respectively, and so getting basically more skills and support in those areas, which I don't particularly have, especially the law side has been incredibly helpful. We just got, everything set up, finished all of that admin work recently, including, the website and the ability to donate now, which is really great. I've had support from my family, friends, just so many close people in my life who have seen the passion and the interest and the vision and helped me literally like sit down and say, write for 20 minutes what you're going to do. Stop talking about ideas. I want to help the world. And that's great. Like, what are we going to do? What's going to happen? I've gone on, trips with, there's another mentor. I mean, so I could list so many. Chris Sheehan, who I worked with, he runs a fintech startup. Jake, who runs Stelu, he helped me literally whiteboard for hours in Salt Lake City just on a random business trip. And just so much support near and far, and it's been amazing.
That's fantastic. It really is it's a group activity. It's a many hands coming together to make something like this possible, and so it's wonderful to be able to see all the different people who have participated and supported along the way and kind of gotten you to gotten Nourish All to be a thing that it is now, and you have all that basis to go forward, which is just wonderful.
Yeah, it's really given I think the momentum and the support to say, okay, this is real. Like, we're doing this. We've got, this isn't just ideas. I have had so many business ideas, and this is really happening. And we've made so much progress. And I think with the support from the board, from mentors, from friends, family, loved ones, who are like literally shoveling dirt with me, helping to make it happen, just gives me that drive. I'm already 100%, 110% committed, especially to this year and the goals I just laid out, like super clear for me. But then to have that extra support and the push is, we're doing it, Ed. We're doing it.
One step at a time, one project at a time, one focus at a time, and just taking the next step, which is it's just fun to see how fast that you've been able to set up these different things that you're doing and just put it together. So and inviting the students, you've got the student group that's coming in to do this build day, and so what's kind of your vision of how that interaction goes and what they walk away with?
Yeah, so what's really great is the school has a garden program, and Willie Quayle is the head of it. And coincidentally, he's friends with the person who I rent my house from. So Waimea, this is where I live in Hawaii, is a very small community. So
All the
he has
threads
been
come together. Yeah,
all the threads. Yeah.
yeah.
So he has been behind, the idea of this community garden period in general, kind of since day zero. And when it came together that there was this property, Keikumu, that had the right site and the right interest and the right people set up, and then there was a student who was interested in basically having this be her independent study. He, yeah, was even more on board, and so he helped to organize this work day. And what I'm hoping and expecting that the students get out of it is seeing not just gardening in their home backyards or at the garden at the school, but how it can look in different climates, different, physical setups, and from ground zero. Because their garden at the school is incredible, but it's a running program. They have lots and lots of support, and it's been there. We're starting from, rocky ground, from the ground up, literally.
It's a very
So
different.
I'm hoping that they get to piece together, the starting point of what a garden looks like and what it takes to get it to the point that they see every day at the school. And then just connecting with community. I think this Friday is going to be a lot about community. There's all sorts of different ages and people, and so I'm hoping that it's just, another way to invoke that sense of community and not even giving back, more like co-creation and unity within community, because we're all so connected, especially living on an island.
Is there school on the wet side of the line? Because you've talked about a little bit how the microclimates shift so fast. It's like one street to the next, all of a sudden you're in
Yeah,
the dry zone.
it is. It's on the dry side, but they do get a lot of mist because they're in this tree line and in the hills, so they're
Mhm.
even like a little bit higher elevation. And where we're going is super dry, so it will be a different climate zone. And there's actually, the school is half boarding, and so there's quite a lot of international students, which, they're accustomed now to living in Hawaii, but I think, exposure, to even more parts of the island that maybe they haven't been to or haven't spent a lot of time in, will be something new and interesting for them as well.
Fantastic. All right. Well, so you have a lot of resources. I mean, you have all of your background. You've got your mentors and supporters, and you've got your amazing board of directors, and so and a clear core mission of where you're trying to go and how you're going to get there. So I think you're set up to succeed. One of the things that we wanted to talk about today was your new website and a feature of your website,
Yeah.
because this is like new breaking news that not only do you have a website, but
New breaking news. I don't look sleep deprived, I don't think, but I might be a little bit.
well, that's what the coffee's for, then.
Yeah, hence the coffee. With great support from Jess and Leslie to help me get this done, I now have the ability to donate or accept donations on my website. And yeah, there's a button big as
That's right.
day with a
Many,
nice
many hand
green
claps.
heart.
That's right.
Yes, thank you. That's my mother. Always
That's
number
a
one.
big step.
Yeah. And so I have added that. Yes.
Yeah.
And um, if you're on my email list, I just sent out an end of year newsletter, which I'll also post on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. And it has kind of recap a lot of what I talked through today. But there's also a link to donate there too. So I am so happy. I have already just want to give a shout out to a couple people, Jeremy, Evan, and Nita, who have already donated, and super, super appreciative and grateful for that. And so the support is welcomed, of course, not, no obligation, just if you feel inspired by what we're doing. The donations right now are going towards the Kekumu project. So we have still more materials and, help to make it a reality. And then I've, talked about the Kenya project and the one in Mali, and then have lots of future things to do with affordable housing properties. And so the support will go towards making all of that a reality.
There's more projects in the pipeline that are coming, and it's like get the pilot done and show how the process works, and then do the next and the next, and just keep going.
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay, and so also people can follow you. Are you making a separate Instagram account for Nourish All, or are you going to, for now, keep everything in your primary Sam Coaches?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that this morning. I right now have kept everything under me. I would like to have a Nourish All Instagram, also because on Instagram and Facebook you can now collect donations and do fundraising directly. So I think that'll be the next step. But for now, follow me here as you do, and yeah,
As
I'm just.
I do.
Yeah, as you do. And as I follow Ed, Ed has been getting more into Instagram lives, which have been really great. And I just, you got to follow Ed. As Ed said, if you don't know Sam, you got to know Sam. If you don't know Ed, you got to know Ed. Ed has been just the absolute greatest blessing. So, so thankful for, for your course, your support. I have learned so much. I mean, so much. Like the course is literally the most valuable thing I've ever done. I have 2 degrees and I have done lots of permaculture retreats and courses. And I learned way more practical things out of Ed's 3-day workshop, and then he has an extended one for several weeks. But literally learned how to sketch. Oh, wait, I got to show you. Sketch garden design, learn about how you place things because of wind. Sun radius, still can't even say it, but like this,
That looks
wouldn't.
that looks legit. That's looking really good. And you got how it narrows and tapers so you can kind of follow it around.
Yes, this is all. I have never, been an artist. Did not consider myself a creative at all, and totally have shifted now to understanding the tools and how to be creative, like the practicalities and the steps. Ed breaks everything down into really clear steps, and it's super organized, and he records. So you can go back and listen. And Yulia, yes, 100% agree. Ed is the best. We had such a great time and just such a joy. I can't express enough how you should go check out, because he also has a course coming up on, starts this Friday, right?
Yeah, actually the next garden plan workshop, we did one in September, and the next one starts on Friday of this week. So new people coming in and getting excited about it. And you're creating Nourish All because you're trying to make the world a better place. And I'm creating Garden Creator Studio because I'm trying to make the world a better place by enabling people to take agency over creating the world around them. Like take ideas and be able to manifest them in the world. And so I think gardens are the right way to learn how to do that, because you have so much design freedom to do it. And you can just, like you can practice that process of seeing a possibility, taking an idea and turning it into reality with very few constraints. And so it's this wonderful practice ground. And I just get so excited about it that I end up more energized at the end of teaching than when I start. So I figured that's a good indication that I'm on the right path. So just trying
Yes.
to support people.
And what is your path, Ed? So you've got the course this weekend, which I just saw Busy Bee is attending as recommended by Yulia, which is awesome. You're gonna have a great time.
Yes,
Um,
and Julia, thank you so much for the recommendation too on your Instagram stories. That was really kind.
what does Garden Creator Studio have in store? What should we be looking out for from you, Ed?
It's really in kind of the scope of everything. I try to keep it as simple as possible, like what people need. And actually, okay, so I've got my little symbols just hovering over my head, right? It really is this simple, like figure out what you want to get out of creating your own garden, and then create a vision for your garden. And then in the larger program, which you participated in, we focus on what does that actually mean? How do you take that vision and break it down into how you do things? And then how do you plan out how you're going to get it done? And that's where you mentioned like the action sprints and so that you can set a milestone and then how are you going to get to it? So who does what, when, and why? And then beyond that, I have a vision of a program that I want to build to continue to support people along that path because I find that people are running along and then and I don't know if you want to share any experiences about this, but you're going along and then there's some sort of roadblock. And I don't want that to be a barrier for people. So I just want to create a way for people to still be able to connect with me and be able to overcome that roadblock and keep going so that they get to the garden that they want to create for themselves, whether it's at their home or whether it's out in the community. Because the big vision is by enabling people to become creators that of their own space, that then they can take that same set of skills and now what else can you create in the world using those things? I mean, do we get together as a community and create community gardens or improve our schools or that sort of thing? And it all comes back to one driving question for me, which is what would a worldwide community, you talk about going global, right? What would a worldwide community of everyday creators make possible in the world? And the answer is, I don't know, but I want to find out. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I just want to support people and, take all the noise and break it down to the few things that actually matter.
Well, I'm on board. I think the program you have set up is does just that, and I've been I'm living proof, um, and really would love to have a community. I think like you said, there's always a roadblock, and there's so many creators, and I think people who are wanting to create and would really love to be a part of that, making the world better, whether it's one garden or one, plant or one idea at a time.
So we'll build our community and keep going. Sam,
Yeah.
I just want to reinforce that people can go to your website. Can you give us the website for Nourish All?
Oh, yes. It is nourishall.org.
That's easy.
Maybe I'll type it in the nourishall.org. You can also go, if you're on my Instagram, there should be like a highlight that has the link in there, but nourishall.org, and get to see everything that we're doing on there. Yeah. And
Great.
Ed, your handle obviously is here, but
Yeah. At
your
gardenstudio.com and you can find the stuff. The garden plan workshop only happens a few times a year because as Sam knows, it's a lot of energy. It takes a lot of my energy to put on, and so I just do it a few times a year. But I do it as a live experience so that people can get the most out of it and really connect with it. There is a question that I'll take about
yeah.
the garden plan workshop, and then if you guys have questions for Sam, about Nourish All and where it's going and Sam's background, just type in in the comments like Q colon and then what your question is, and we'll take a little bit of time here I think to answer some questions for Sam. Let me hit this one
Yeah,
from My World Rory. Tell
that
us
is Jeremy.
hi,
Jeremy
hi
Rowe.
Jeremy. Who's a good fit for the course? The garden plan workshop. Who's a good? It is directed, or it is designed to primarily support homeowners who want to transform their yard into outdoor garden living space. Many people, like they stand at the window with their cup of coffee and they look out and they just see this sort of blank space that they don't do much with. So imagine being able to transform that into additional living space for how you want to live. Instead of going to the city and pulling building permits to expand the size of your house, just turn the space around the house into part of your living space. And it's a little different than architecture, but it's the same basic ideas. You're creating spaces. And so that's what it's set up to do. Now, Sam is doing a really neat thing with it, where she's taking all the same ideas and she's just looking at spaces, yard spaces at affordable housing communities that can be turned into not just a place to plunk a box to grow food, but to create a center of community around the growing of food and the education around food, right? So like you're not just building plots, you're creating a space for people to want to be in, so that then they spend time together and they build this community at the affordable housing community, and then you start building them at multiple communities and they create this larger interconnected network. But it's all the same ideas. It's about building living space outside. So
Yes.
anybody who wants to do that is a good fit for the workshop. I basically, 20 years in landscape architecture, what I've done is try to just like get rid of the noise and get down to just the basics of what people actually need to do. Like, what do you do to get from here to there, there to there, there to there, so that you can create your space? Great question. Other question? Are there questions for Sam on where she's going? Sam, I think this has been a very useful update, and one of the things I'm looking forward to is a year from now, looking back at this video and then seeing all the things that you've been able to accomplish by the time that we get to the next annual
Yes.
check-in and I'm sure you
Yeah.
get other check-ins, but I think having this as like January, February start to the year, like, what is Nourish All doing? It's going to be really, really special.
Yeah.
Here's a
I'm
question
just
also
reading.
from Jeremy. Sam, which types of sites or communities are a good fit for future projects? Ooh, that's a good one. You mentioned your global ambition, but are there any particular cities or characteristics that make a better fit? Do you want to talk about the stuff that you're looking at in the South and over on the East Coast?
Yeah, it's a um, great question, Jeremy. So right now, what would make a good fit is, um, so I think the baseline is affordable or low income housing, basically something that is serving the traditionally like underserved or more at risk populations. So I'm not currently interested in, anything that's, I would say, just the traditional housing. So something that really does have that social impact to it. Second characteristic I would say is I'm starting with like warm and temperate climates, just because I'm more familiar with that space um, from my farming, from living in Hawaii and all that. So also just easier, less barriers, right, when you have a longer grow season and it's conducive.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third is um, spaces that have ground level land. And
Mm-hmm.
so I learned this from Ed actually, because I was initially looking at, I have a family friend in Boston, Daniel, who is helping to look at properties in Boston, and realized that with the cold and the urban and the lack of space, it was actually really difficult, second kind of project to go into, because
Mm-hmm.
it's just so different from Hawaii. So right now, looking at that kind of like southeastern belt, I would say, like Texas, Georgia, Florida. I would also be interested in anything in like California, basically the southern part of the U.S.
And the
Um,
thing is, you have the tools to be able to grow into those other areas in the different climate zones, because we've talked about how to get familiar very quickly with the new climate versus, sort of the
yeah,
permaculture approach of like making your tea and sitting in the space for 3 years,
yeah,
which is neat, but takes a long time. Um,
gotta
yeah,
gotta get
right,
this
right. Like,
dream
yeah,
going.
but what do we do now, right? So yeah, so you've got the tools to be able to expand to that over time, but really focusing in on A, where your experience strengths lie, and then B, focusing on where you can serve the greatest need. So the folks
Yes.
where you can do the social impact, social good.
Yeah.
Um, there was another question here, I think from your mom, Liz Goodart. Um,
Yeah.
how are you going to recruit more helpers? Uh, you've talked about the project supporters. So how do people become project supporters? And I think Daniel,
Yes.
you talked about Daniel in Boston. He's signed up for the workshop. So I hope he doesn't mind me giving him a
Oh,
shout out.
good.
Yeah, yeah, he wants to be a project supporter. So he's on board. He's doing it.
Good. I shared it with him, and he's like, "Oh, this looks amazing. I'm definitely going to do this." So, um, glad to know that he did sign up. Yes, the project helpers. Good question. First, I've realized recently that I do need help, and accepting help has been a absolute game changer. And not because I'm selfish and I want to keep everything. It's just, I didn't take up people's offers to help because, they're interested. So step one, accept help. Step two, how do I find the helpers? Um, I think it goes along with the, site seeking, like what are possible other locations, like that Jeremy asked. What I would like to do, and I'll post this eventually on my website, is seeking project heroes. And
Okay.
so this is something that Ed and I have talked about. And basically, if there's somebody who says, "Hey, you know what? I just heard you say you're looking for, housing for people in need, and it has space that's ground level, and they have mentioned or seems like they'd be interested in a garden, and I live in Austin, Texas. I would love to have an intake of that, of the interest, what's the property type, and even the person, like, what are they interested in doing? Are they just interested in, hey, I heard about this site and I wanted to connect you? Or the next level of, I'm actually interested in garden design and want to help you and could be, project manager for the site. And so one, would love to have, like seek out those folks and have them incoming to me. Um, and then two, down the line, would like to have a more structured approach of, when someone is a project hero and has an idea and wants to help, transitioning them and getting them along the line of becoming a project manager to actually, you know, take Ed's course, learn the steps so we have all a common understanding of what it means to design a garden that's a Nourish All garden. And after, going through that course and that process, then being able to set up the project, do the design, the build, the educate. And Nourish All can be, basically have a bunch of these project heroes and project managers all over the country, um, who are helping. So that's the grand vision. In the current vision, I would say, if you know anyone, if you're in Hawaii, DM me, go on my website. We're always looking for literally any and all help, whether it's manual labor or, connections or support. Um, and then the last thing I'll say is, again, the financial support, like helping, if you are not in Hawaii and you don't have any interest or knowledge of sites, financial contribution and help is also welcomed.
Great. So you've got supporters of all different types, and then you've got project heroes who are connecting you with potential new projects, whether in Hawaii or looking to the future, maybe in Austin or Georgia, or sort of the warm temperate things, and then slowly migrating. And then you've got the project managers who are really getting into the co-creation process with the residents of particular places. I think I don't know if we've acknowledged the project heroes heroes slash supporters of the project managers there at Kikumu. Yeah, but I know that you've had a good relationship with one or both of the
Yes.
manager
Yeah.
folks.
Um, oh, Cindy. Hey, Cindy. So yes, I had a really good relationship with, she works at Hawaii Public Housing Authority and basically was, yeah, the project hero for Keikumo. She said, hey, I hear what you want to do. This property isn't going to work, but this other one has really good space. Come on down. And that's it. So that level, she ended at Project Hero.
Mhm,
That was an amazing support, but it didn't continue because she has a full-time job and she,
mhm.
that was it. Um, and so would welcome more of those Project Heroes for sure.
And so that's really what the project hero role is build making the connections and being sort of that the high level support of connecting with the people who own the property and know that there's a potential and an opportunity to support and connect with the residents there, so that everybody's on board, everybody's on the same page about wanting this to be something that exists in this space. And then with that support, then you find the project manager and layer it on, and I think that's a really nice system. And then you bring in a whole library of supporters to rally around making this thing happen, and it feels to me like a very robust approach to be able to bring in help in all these different ways, in the way that people can feel like they can best show up and support the process.
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right.
Yes.
I, are there any other questions before we wrap up? I think we're just about there. But
Yeah.
as we wait to see if there are any others, Sam, I want to just acknowledge the amazing progress that you've made. Because when we talked back in September, it was like, I want to do a pilot project sometime in the next year, right? And you're gonna have it built by April so that you can go to Kenya with it done, with the like the before and after video already completed. Like, it has been an amazing journey to watch. It is, it's when we think about business, right? Sort of like the bottom of the curve, and then you start to kick up, and like you're already hitting that inflection point and bringing people together and making this possible. You are manifesting an amazing idea in the world and just doing it, which is so inspiring to see. So keep at it. Congratulations, and keep on going.
Thank you, Ed. Yeah, it's been such a whirlwind past 6 months, like not even. And I just thank you for all the support and the acknowledgement, and it really keeps the fire going. So
Glad to help
thank
where I
you.
can. Absolutely. All right. And,
Okay.
and to all of you, thank you for jumping on and joining us on this Instagram Live in the middle of the day. It's about noon here. I think it's about 10 where Sam is, and who
Yes.
knows what time it is where all of you are. So wherever you are and however you're joining, thank you so much for jumping on and being a part of this conversation. And if you're catching the replay, that's great too. You can find Sam's website at nourishall.org.
That
Fantastic.
is correct.
All right, and don't
Thank
forget
you,
that
Ed.
there's a
Yeah,
brand new donate
give
button
you
if
a
you want to do that.
thanks, Ed. Yeah, thanks everybody for joining and for whoever's tuning in for the replay. Lots of nuggets in here, so thanks for tuning in and mahalo, aloha from Hawaii.
All the best.